So if you haven't already heard, which I'm sure everybody has, because there's been this whole like free Don Lemon movement, four journalists were recently arrested for essentially doing their job. We had Don Lemon, excuse me if I butcher this name, Traham Jean Cruz, Georgia Fort, and Jamil Lydell Lundy. They were all arrested by federal agents in connection to covering the protests that took place in a church in Minneapolis. Obviously, they are having their rights violated. I also think it's notable that this is for Black journalists. That seems like something that's honestly not a coincidence. Here are their pictures here. This is Georgia. I've been hearing a lot about her. She's actually the, I think, associate president or something of the Association of Black Journalists for her region. Um, Anyway, all of them were covering the protests and they were arrested. Two of them are independent journalists, as people have said. Don Lemon spoke out earlier. It looks like he went live. So we'll watch his statement in a minute. But there was tons of coverage of this, and it's been honestly really scary. There's one of the most terrifying videos that Georgia actually recorded where she's in her house and you can see the agents like coming to her. We'll watch that right now. Let me find the clip. Is this it? I think this is, yeah. So she said she said federal agents came to her door at 6:30 a.m. and arrested her for filming the protest. I wish I could find the other video that she shared where you could actually see. It was the one that was so jarring where you could actually see people waiting outside her house where they were basically trying to get inside her house. It's really terrifying, but let's watch this one. She went live on Facebook, by the way. This is where why it says agents at my door.
You guys, I wanted to alert the public that agents are at my door right now. They're saying that they were able to go before a grand jury sometime, I guess, in the last 24 hours, and that they have a warrant for my arrest. I've talked to my attorney, and I'm being advised to go with them, I guess, down to Whipple. And my children are here. They're impacted by this. This is all stemming from the fact that I filmed a protest as a member of the media. We are supposed to have our constitutional right of the freedom to film, to be a member of the press. I don't feel like I have my First Amendment right as a member of the press. Because now federal agents are at my door arresting me for filming the church protest a few weeks ago. Again, I don't have a long time here, you guys, but I wanted you to know, for me, agents are at my door right now. My attorney has spoken with them. I did send a relative outside to talk to them. They're showing some type of documentation, apparently, that they got an indictment from a grand jury. I knew that I was on a defendant's list. I did not publish it because it was under seal. And so we've done everything that we can to try and abide by, the advice of our attorneys. But right now, you guys, I wanted you to know I'm going to have to hop off here and surrender to agents as a member of the press. I filmed the church protest a few weeks ago, and now I'm being arrested for that. It's hard to understand how we have a constitution, constitutional rights, when you can just be arrested for being a member of the press. We've seen all these violations. All right, you guys, I gotta go. They're knocking.
Yep, she's coming right now.
Give me 1 second. All right, guys.
You want to?
That video is chilling. There are other videos that she shares where she's actually, when the agents are outside, that I think are so scary, where she's like literally woken up at 6:30 in the morning, dragged out of her house, told that, she's basically has to go with these federal agents or, God knows what else is going to happen. It's really scary. And, you see there's a bunch more coverage talking about just all of these arrests. Somebody started a GoFundMe and this support page for her. So I think that's linked somewhere here. Oh, yeah, here. GoFundMe, Georgia. This is one. Yeah, this is georgiafort.com/support. So you can support her there. And then, of course, Don Lemon was one of the other journalists that was arrested. And he's probably like the most famous one. So there was a lot of drama. Oh, yeah, here's her full live stream. Let's see if we can see some of the stuff.
You want to wear my black boots?
You guys,
Oh, no, this is just the same one. Anyway, it's really scary. And I think let's see what Don Lemon had to say after he was speaking out. I think my friend said that he's mostly saying thank you.
But I had some things that I had to do today. But in all seriousness, I am fine. I am doing well. And I appreciate all of your love and your support. I really do, more than anything. As a matter of fact, I want to tell you guys, like, I ran into Lemonheads today. There was a gentleman who's a Lemonhead in the courtroom.
Can I just say, when I was at the protests today downtown in LA, so many people had lemons, and I didn't realize that he calls his fandom the Lemonheads. But like all of these people had lemons. And also I saw like everybody on Twitter and other places were spamming like the lemon emoji in support of him. And I just think it's hilarious that like Don Lemon of all people, no hate to Don Lemon, I've been on his show several times, but like he's not exactly like, a radical. Like somebody tweeted something funny earlier. I retweeted it, but they were like, I hate that we have to, what did they say? This administration has forced us to say phrases like free Don Lemon and Jimmy Kimmel is being silenced. And I think that's a good way to put it because like neither one of these guys is like super radical, but I think it's almost, as disturbing that it's happening to people like this, because if it can happen to these high profile centrist type moderate Democrats, like obviously it can and has been happening to to more marginalized people, or people that have a little bit more extreme leftist beliefs. Anyway, that's all to say that yeah, he has a really strong audience of lemon heads. And yeah, so let's hear, if I think most of this is just thanking people, but let's see if he says anything noteworthy
this evening with a Don Lemon show hat on, the light blue hat, and he made sure that I saw him and he waved. And so I have a lot of folks to thank, and in no particular order, but the mayor of Los Angeles was there, Karen Bass. I think it was fantastic. By the way, I don't know anything. Like, I have not seen the news. I haven't seen anything. I did not know. I've been getting feedback from everyone about
Yeah, he was arrested in LA. He came to cover some award show, and I can't remember what award show it was. And so he was actually arrested in LA, which is, I think, part of why there were so many lemon emoji, like lemon signs at the LA protest today, maybe because it did happen in LA. But yeah, he talks. I mean, I don't want to get into it too much because I don't think he says any news, but let's hear.
Journalists pretty unanimously, pretty strongly to support me. I understand. I believe that CNN released a statement. I've heard that CNN released a statement. Thank you very much. I have no animus for CNN. I have no animus for anyone, but I tell the truth as about what I see. And I think it's time for all journalists to stand up for each other. So I appreciate that. And look, at CNN, I worked with the best journalists in the world. So I wish them nothing but the best. But I believe those journalists as well need to stand up to the corporation. They need to tell Warner Brothers Discovery, stop playing and get your hands out of the newsroom. CBS needs to tell.
Okay. I totally agree with him. And it's kind of funny to see Don Lemon say this stuff. It almost reminds me of what Tucker Carlson said after he left Fox News. And I think in both cases, both of them were pushed out of their networks, which is like why they're able to say this stuff. But it's 100% true that, yeah, the corporate journalists need to stand up to corporate power, but corporate journalists don't stand up to corporate power, because if corporate journalists do stand up to corporate power, then they're no longer corporate journalists. They get fired. Hello. That's like part of why the system is the way it is. So I mean, there are so many amazing journalists that work in traditional media. I'm not going to discount their amazing work. Like I worked in traditional media for years, but if you work in traditional media, and again, I know this because I worked in traditional media, you cannot question corporate power. You can't. You can only question it maybe within like the very narrow bounds of like an investigative story or whatever. But you know, you can't like yeah, you can't question it. Somebody asked, "Can I give a refresher of what happened with Don Lemon and CNN?" Basically, he was pushed out and fired. I'm gonna try to find an article about it. But he was like, I think some people there was reporting that there was kind of like drama with it. Um, he was on CNN for a really long time. So he was a CNN journalist beginning in 2006. So he was there from 2006 to 2023. So over 20 years he was there. And he left in April 2023. Um about like it was kind of they basically pushed him out. Like he made this sexist misogynistic remark where he talked about some woman being past her prime. I can't remember, I think it was a political leader, which is sexist obviously. And I guess he was kind of like maybe a diva behind the scenes. I don't know, I mean, like my friend works for Don Lemon now and like has never said anything like that about him. Not to say that he wasn't like that when he worked at CNN, but I think that CNN is very happy to tolerate toxic behavior from a lot of people as long as they want to keep you. But I think as soon as they don't want to keep you, they're going to be like, you know, oh, you're toxic. Oh, you're misogynistic. Oh, you're treating people bad. And it's like, well, you guys allow a lot of people to be a diva. Like ultimately these people are talent getting paid millions of dollars. Again, not to excuse their behavior, but I feel like they like pushed him out maybe because of political stuff. CNN is getting more like right wing. They have new ownership. And so who knows? We don't really know the details. But yeah, but he left and he became an independent journalist and he's on YouTube and he's actually like really leaning into the live streaming stuff. And I've gone on his show before and like again, he's like a kind of a resistance person in the sense that like he has a lot of like moms that follow him. But he's done a good job, I think, of like putting in the work and building his audience on his own on, YouTube, which I respect. He certainly has more subscribers than me. So I'm not going to throw shade at, the work that he's done and the audience that he's built. Let's hear what else he has to say.
Paramount and David Ellison and whatever, get out of our newsroom, get out of our journalism. Barry Weiss, take your hands off of it. Let the journalists be the journalists. All of them. That goes for every single corporate entity that owns a journalistic organization. Let the journalists be the journalists because they're going to save our democracy if you just let them do it. The way to stand up to a bully, to a tyrant, is not to bend the knee. It's not to acquiesce. It is to metaphorically punch them right in the nose. And you need to introduce not only Donald Trump and the folks who work for him and his administration, but the corporate overlords and the gatekeepers. You need to introduce them to the word no. All the journalists, they cannot fire you. We were always taught when I worked in corporate media that the news is a star. That's bullshit. If the news was a star, everybody would have the same ratings. And everybody doesn't have the same ratings. The journalists are the stars. The people who are delivering the news, those are the stars. And the people who do it well, do well. They get the ratings and they get the respect. So it is.
Okay, he's making a really good point here. And it's so amazing to see somebody that worked in like corporate media for 20 years say this. What he says when he's talking about like, they say like the news is the star or whatever. There is this idea in that is never been true, by the way, but it's something that like old school media people say of like, don't become the story. You can never become the story. Like, let the news speak for itself. Now, again, that's never true. Like, would you say that to Woodward and Bernstein? You know what I mean? Like, no, male journalists have always especially like benefited from a personality driven media ecosystem and journalism, being a journalist is a public job. It means that you have a public facing brand and all this stuff. So it's kind of usually a way for like corporate overlords to devalue journalists and tell them like, you're not that important. Like the news is what gets, the news is why people come to us. And it's like, yeah, but people don't just want to get the news from anybody. They want to get the news from people they trust, and they trust these big time journalists that have famous names and that they know that have done really great work. And so I think like that's what he's referencing there. He's totally right, by the way. Like the stuff he's saying, I love to see him say it. It's just kind of funny, just coming from him because he was in it for so long.
And actually having come from that, now I understand that what my star quality is, that is being honest and authentic and telling the truth. And I think that's, if everyone did that and they were not afraid of the powers that be, that's our motto. That's our mission. Just like a doctor, just like a lawyer, what we're supposed to do is hold the powerful to account and do no harm. And if you don't want to do harm to the American people, then stand up for democracy, stand up for the First Amendment. So thank you so much, CNN journalists. I love you, Dana Bash. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Aaron Burnett. Thank you to all of the people over.
Okay, he's naming some of the worst, like corporate stooges and Zionists, but we're gonna let that slide.
At CNN who I like, and thank you to the management and to who I worked with forever for putting out a statement, and thank you to the folks on MSNBC. Thank you to Scott Galloway and to
Oh God, Scott Galloway. Okay, he's literally thanking the worst people alive. We don't have to watch this. I'm sure these are all his bestie friends, which shows kind of that he has a little bit of a toxic circle. Also, I love that no one is telling him to turn the TV off, which is like reflecting in the window behind him.
everyone. I got a funny note from Anthony Scaramucci just a moment ago, and he said, "We were on your show today, but you weren't there. You must have been busy." So I appreciate that humor, Anthony. But for so many people who have come on, look, I just want to tell you that, I also want to thank all of the folks who are, the foreign journalists who are in war zones,
Like Gaza.
it's just everyone. Thank you so much. I mean, my heart is, I am overwhelmed. I haven't had a chance to read but a few texts from folks. I just got off the phone with my mom for the first time, and she was worried, and my nieces, and
We don't have to watch the rest of it. I think he mostly is just thanking people. But yeah, I think I mean, look, I'm glad he's out. Georgia was also released. I think everybody that was arrested is out now, but it is terrifying what happened, and it's a huge violation of the First Amendment. And I think it shows, honestly, how important it is to protect free speech and the First Amendment. No, he doesn't. Don Lemon doesn't really talk about Gaza very much, if at all. I'm not sure he has. But I think something that is important to note about this stuff is, somebody said this here, especially when you're talking about Georgia. So 2 of the journalists that were arrested were actually independent journalists, and I think that's so chilling, because increasingly journalists, even famous journalists like Don Lemon, are not connected full-time to a media organization. They're not full-time staffers, and they don't have full-time legacy media connections. And so when these things happen, when they're arrested, there is no entity to back them up and save them and protect them. And that's really bad and dangerous. So I think, like, the reason it's so important to protect online speech, and specifically like just any sort of internet content and free expression online, is because that's how independent journalists do their work. You'll note, actually, one of the top responses to this post, which went really viral, obviously 633,000 views, is this person that says, so technically, can't anyone be an independent journalist? Therefore, under her interpretation, journalists could enter a mosque, interrupt the service, as long as they're filming it as a journalist. First of all, right-wingers do this stuff all the time. Nick Shirley. Not that he's gone into a mosque, but you know what I mean? He's barging in places. And, I think this person responds very correctly, saying, fascinating conversation, theoretically, but in this case, you have 2 people who are very clearly journalists. Not only do they have background in journalism, awards, history, but, this woman, Georgia, was, like, again, on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists. Like, these are full-time journalists. And then he sort of snarkily says, "Thanks for clarifying. I wasn't aware there was an award prerequisite to be unlocked as a journalist." Obviously, there's not. It's not like if you win an award, but I think having won many journalistic awards and having a documented history of breaking news and doing on-the-ground journalism obviously means you're a journalist. But I think that, like, there is no accreditation, right? Like being a journalist, you can join the Society of Professional Journalists, but you don't. Being a journalist is not like being a lawyer or a doctor where you have to like pass an exam, which is good, by the way. Like journalism is a trade, and so I think what's kind of scary right now is they're trying to attack independent journalists and independent journalism and go back to this world where, oh, the only journalists that are acceptable, like the only people that are protected from persecution or arrests, or the only people that are allowed to film certain protests are like legacy media journalists, and those are the only like real journalists. And that's a really dangerous place to go, because these legacy media places are not going to cover the protests in the same way. They're not going to challenge power in the same way. And without independent journalism, we have no challenge to like legacy media, and we don't have a lot of this on the ground coverage. Local news has been completely decimated. So we want on the ground journalists, and we want to protect independent journalists, even if it is somebody that just picks up a phone and starts doing journalism that day. We still want to protect that person as a journalist because they're doing the act of journalism. And, you know, it's just, I think that that's really important. So, yeah, Mehdi Hassan is also a really good example of a journalist who went independent and is now owns his media company. I'm a contributor to Zateo, by the way, and I have a piece up on Zateo that should go up this weekend. It got delayed because of all this Don Lemon stuff, but it's about free speech and the internet, and it's about some of this stuff mostly related to TikTok. But I think, yeah, I think when we talk about journalists being arrested, or when we look at, who's being targeted, et cetera, I think that, I closed out the other tab I meant to open, but I just think it's really important to protect independent journalists, because they are going to continue to persecute independent journalists and try to act like, oh, these people aren't real journalists because they're not at the New York Times. It's fine if we just arrested all these people. And they also try to conflate independent journalists with activists, because a lot of independent journalists do activism. A lot of them are marginalized people that are involved in activism around their communities. And they'll be like, oh, well, this person's not a real journalist, they're an activist. And so, yeah, we just need to protect everybody doing journalism online. And I'm glad these people are free, but they should have never been arrested. And it's terrifying. And somebody asked, how do we find the delicate balance with supporting independent journalists but having guardrails to avoid folks like Nick Shirley? Well, guardrails won't really avoid folks like Nick Shirley, just like guardrails don't avoid Fox News, right? You can tune into Fox News, you can tune into CNN, you can tune into, the Epoch Times or the New York Times. Like, there's always going to be different quality levels of journalism. Some people are really bad journalists, and they are, essentially like influencer trolls like Nick Shirley. But there's not like a law or anything, right? Like, we just need enough media literacy to say that, like, hey, don't listen to that person. He's a bad journalist. He's not acting in good faith. He's not following the principles of journalism. Nick Shirley doesn't, make sure he's reporting the truth, for instance, before going out and reporting it. He's just doing influencer slop, where he's going out and recording a bunch of content and then like misrepresenting it. If you're a journalist, you should have a commitment to the truth, meaning that you should follow journalistic practices. So you should be asking people for comment. You should be fact checking your work. You should be triple confirming things before you report them. Nick Shirley is not doing any of that. So I think he's a bad journalist. If assuming that we even call him a journalist, I actually wouldn't call him a journalist, but I don't know. I mean, people call like Laura Loomer a journalist sometimes too. I'm like, that lady is not a journalist. But again, like, journalism is something that can be practiced. Anybody can do journalism. You don't have to be like, there's no training to be a journalist. I wouldn't say Nick Shirley is a journalist by trade. Like, could he do journalism? Sure, if he wanted to follow journalistic ethics and stuff. But he doesn't. Yeah, Tim Pool considers himself a journalist, which is laughable. Again, this man is not a journalist. But yeah, the lines are all very blurry, but essentially any journalist should have a commitment to the truth. And somebody posted in the comments, slopagandist. Yes, Mia Sato wrote a great piece on The Verge this week that was using the term slopagandist for people like Nick Shirley. Somebody asked, wasn't there some regulation that Reagan removed that laid the groundwork for Fox News to become the conglomerate that it is? I'm trying to remember. There was I don't think it was Reagan. I think it was Bill Clinton that allowed for some consolidation of media or something. I can't remember the details of all that because it was the 90s. But Fox News is bad. I mean, like, Fox News is bad not because we don't have accreditation for journalism. Fox News is bad because it's just the way that it's bad in a lot of similar ways that CNN is bad, which is that these are for-profit corporate entities whose goals are to make money. And if your goal is to, monetize outrage and push right-wing reactionary beliefs, like, yeah, you're probably not going to be doing good journalism. But that goes into like the business models of journalism and like what business models incentivize good journalism. I think for-profit business models often don't incentivize good journalism when it's a for-profit like corporate business. For-profit business models generally are not great I don't love what they've done to the journalistic industry as a whole, but I support sort of independent journalist businesses rather than corporate entities. Oh yeah, the Telecommunications Act of 1996. I don't know as much about kind of the outcome of that, but somebody did a thread recently where they were talking about like how that was the root of all the problems in our media ecosystem, and I believe that it probably was. I've only really covered the internet side of journalism. I don't cover traditional media, so I'm not as familiar with like the cable news regulations and stuff that led to cable news. Okay, so let's talk about TikTok because somebody asked about TikTok.